Hello, I'm Duane Hughes, chair of the UBS Americas Advisory Council. Welcome to the UBS studio. And today I'm with 8-time Grammy winner, bassist, composer, and Newport Jazz Festival artistic director, Christian McBride. Welcome to the UBS studios, Christian.
I'm very, very happy to see you. It's been a long time, my friend.
Yes, absolutely. And let me again thank you for joining us. And if we had to go through your full bio, it would take the entire time. So that was abbreviated version. But let's get started with talking about the here and now.
Yes.
The New York Times did an excellent feature of you in February. It's called Christian McBride, Revered in Jazz, Playing the Long Game at 50 years old. I can still consider you a youngin', so as far as I'm concerned, you're a millennial. But
no, I'm an X.
Right? You're an X.
I'm an X.
Okay.
Yeah.
But since the article, you dropped your 18th album and you're currently on tour. So tell us about life at 50. Tell us about the tour and how our financial advisors, employees, top talent, and clients can sort of pick up with you.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful year, a very busy year. I'm currently in the middle of the tour, celebrating our new album. We just finished playing at Dizzy's at Jazz Lincoln Center. We just closed on Easter Sunday. And we have a few shows coming up at the end of April. On the West Coast, we have Oakland, Los Angeles, Phoenix, and then New Orleans. And then in June, we have Washington, D.C., Cleveland, St. Paul, and some other cities I'm not remembering. But my whole touring schedule is on my website, christianmcbride.com.
That's excellent. Thank you. And if you want VIP treatment, give me a call, Duane Hughes. You can reach me at duane.l.hughes@ubs.com, and I'll lose some of my leverage to make sure you can get the right tickets. Make sure you can get the right tickets. But that's great. So 50 years old.
Yes.
How you feel? I mean, you've seen your career develop, and you have some of those early years of how you say going through the paces,
yes.
Shall we say?
Yes.
And then now you're 50, and you've brought up so many people, and we'll talk a little bit about it, including my son in the tradition.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling at this point in your life?
I feel really good, man. I feel like this is a middle point because I'm too old to be a young lion, but too young to be an elder, right?
Yeah.
So I think I have the best of both worlds. A lot of the older musicians who really helped me on the way up, many of them are no longer here. But there are a few that have said, hey man, you're doing a good job, you're on the right path. Yeah. And then I meet these young musicians who are 17, 18, 19 years old, and they're like, wow, you were playing in the early 90s, that was so long ago. And I'm thinking, was it?
Yeah.
So it feels good.
That's great. Was this a milestone birthday for you? Did you have a reflection on it? That was like, because some people when they get from 30 to 40 to 50, it's a big deal. Other people just step into the next day not thinking about it. For you, did you have a moment to? I
felt like I stepped into it kind of in motion. I'm not sure if I really had a reflective moment. Mostly because I was gigging. I had a lot of work on my plate, and my agenda was filled, so I didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of reflecting. But every once in a blue moon, I will look at someone like Coleman, or I'll look at Christian Sands, who, when I first met him, I think he was 19 or 20, Warren Wolf, Emmett Cohen, Savannah Harris. And I see these young musicians who were, who still had a teen at the end of the age when I first met them. They're now in their 30s and they're doing great work. I mean, Warren Wolf is actually in his 40s now. And they're like, yeah, Christian helped us out, when we were coming up on the scene. I'm going, wow, doesn't seem like that long ago. But that's the one. Those are the few times where I get very reflective.
No, yeah, when those numbers start coming up and you realize your
Right.
numbers are. But you've been such a mentor to people. Again, I thank you for helping my son. Now he's in his later 20s, but you gave him his big break in the Christian McBride big band at the time. So let's focus on that new generation. I know that your role with Jazz House Kids is very important to you, and the role of music education is important. You and Melissa collaborate. You're so generous with your time in this respect. And UBS is proud to sponsor as well. So
thank you.
reflect a little bit on music education and what you've seen and how that's developed over the last couple of decades in the lives of young people.
Well, let me first say with specific regards to Coleman, when we first heard him play, we thought, what planet is this kid from? Because, I mean, the trombone is a very difficult instrument, just like my instrument, the double bass. It's very difficult to get that clarity, the articulation, so people can understand what you're playing. Because the bass is the lowest of all the string instruments, and the trombone has no keys and no valves, just a slide. So whatever articulation you have to do it with your lips. And when we heard Coleman play, we were like, there's no way in the world this kid's not going to be a star. So I'd be a fool not to put him in my big band.
Well, thank you. No, that was
He's
great.
incredibly talented. But I feel like, I was born and raised in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia is a great, great music city for a number of reasons. And one of the main reasons is because it's one of the last cities that still is very passionate about music education. And I went to, my high school is pretty famous. I went to a place called Creative and Performing Arts, where my classmates were the late Joey DeFrancesco, who was my best friend from the time I was 12 years old through high school and most of my adult life. The Roots went there, Questlove and Black Thought, Boys to Men went there, Kurt Rosenwinkel went there, and we were all part of the same graduating class. But even before then, my middle school had an incredible music program, and they really took the time to make sure that we were not only just well-trained, but that we were exposed to the great musicians out there who were making music. I remember my string teacher took a group of us to see Yo-Yo Ma play with the Philadelphia Orchestra. I must have been 11 years old, and that blew my mind. That stuck with me. That's forever ingrained in my memory. And watching Yo-Yo Ma play the cello, it wasn't even an instrument to him. It was like he was playing bouncing a basketball or something. He had so much joy in his face, and that was my first time seeing the Philadelphia Orchestra. So later on, when I got to high school, these great legends like Dr. Billy Taylor, Max Roach, Kenny Barron, Grover Washington Jr., they took time out of their busy schedules to come and speak to us when we were young musicians in high school. And of course, Wynton Marsalis became like a big mentor to me. He became like a literal big brother. And at that point, I knew that if I was ever in the same position as the musicians who were giving us that time, it's a no-brainer. That's how you keep the cycle going, So I was always dedicated to mentorship before anybody really cared who I was, because I knew how important it was for me that those great musicians spent so much time with us. And oftentimes they wouldn't play. They just were talking to us, telling us stories about, remember Max Roach telling us stories about playing with Charlie Parker in 1946, and we're all like, wow, so that sort of one-on-one mentorship, and that's always meant the world to me. So Jazz House Kids and everything in my career is all about giving back to the young people.
Yeah. No, it's no question. I mean, and the beautiful thing about everything that you've said is you have had this experience in music that, by virtue of an extreme amount of hard work, but also a lot of natural talent, has put you in this very elite experience with music, and you have been able to play across so many genres. We don't have time to go into all the genres that you played in, every musical genre. But also, you're passionate about putting instruments in the hands of kids who can't afford them.
That's correct.
And it's not about that everyone, whether they will become an elite musician or not.
That's right.
It's about music and what it means in your life as a way to express yourself creatively and frankly to discover how you can be excellent at anything.
Absolutely.
And be happy and be joyful and experience emotion in an appropriate way and be more human, if you will. Right? And so that and the fact that you are married to a beautiful woman who also has that passion
That's right.
allows you to then leverage yourself across all levels of music. So if you just speak about like in the minds of community and how important music and music education is as a fundamental term, because there's a threat to the arts. There's a threat to the music.
Always.
And we have to defend it. And you've been one of the major defenders as well.
Well, thank you for
Yeah.
that. You know, we have always felt at Jazz House Kids that the goal isn't necessarily to build up the next Miles Davis or the next John Coltrane. If that happens, great. But our goal is to create model citizens. And what you learn as a musician, those things can apply to any endeavor. You know, one of the things that is great about specifically playing jazz is that you learn how to be a team player. It is imperative that you listen before you speak. You know, so these are values that apply to any endeavor. And obviously you have to practice. There's a lot of language that you have to learn. There's a lot of history you have to learn. There's a tradition that you are a part of that you must learn about before you can add your own 2 cents to it. But most of all, being a team player, listening, having empathy, which is, you know, everything that we talk about falls under the umbrella of empathy. Listening, caring, being musical, knowing that sometimes less is more. Some of my favorite musicians are musicians who, you know, somebody will improvise and they're taking a solo that really builds and builds and builds and says a lot. That next musician will say, you know, I don't need the solo. They said everything that needed to be said. I'll wait till the next one, you know. And that's that sort of, in that high intelligence, also empathy, kind of looking at the big picture, saying, you know, I don't really need to say anything right now, you know. And other times you might, you know. So these are the values.
Judgment. It also helps you develop, that's judgment.
Yes,
that you're talking about, yeah.
And, you know, we hope that those things really seep into these young people. And if they don't go into music, they can apply what they learn in music to whatever they decide to do in life.
I mean, I've certainly seen that in my own son. He sort of, in jazz, you call it listening with the big ear.
Yes.
Right? And so he listens very, very, very carefully to everyone else. And it has helped him otherwise in his career, listen to people and draw the best out for them. And it's important to our clients and our employees and our top talent because we listen to clients deeply to help meet their financial and other needs.
Yes.
You know, in their life and meet their priorities. So it's sort of a life lesson. We're also independently just passionate about art and culture at UBS as one of our core values. So there's so many reasons why we're sort of overlapping.
Goodness.
Yeah. So let me move, if I could, to the Grammys and talk about the 2023 Grammys held in February. You were nominated, and the Jazz House Kids, Samara Joy, was honored as a 2-time Grammy winner for Best New Artist and Best Jazz Vocal Album. Can you talk about that night, what it means to you and Melissa, and what's next for Samara?
You know, her story is one of the best feel-good stories of the year. And I believe that what I love, there's a few things I love about Samara that really hit home. Number one, she's very, very close with her family. She comes from a gospel background. And even now, she still sings in a family gospel group with her father and grandfather, I believe it is. So no matter how popular she gets, she's always like almost literally staying at home to sing with the family while her wings spread doing her jazz stuff. Also, she is a genuine, sweet, kind person. I often feel sometimes in our world, the jazz community, it's kind of hip to be sullen, you know. it's kind of cool to kind of walk around like, yeah, get a little dogmatic, and you play the underdog role a little too much. And whereas Samara really loves life, and she loved life before the Grammys, and knowing that she had once been, she was a TA at Jazz House Kids, and I first heard her when she won the Sarah Vaughan vocal competition at NJPAC in 2019, and all of us who were judges that year, we thought, what's that 60-year-old voice doing in that young body? She sings with a lot of wisdom for someone so young. I mean, I think she's still only, 22, 23, something like that? Yeah. So she has a beautiful road ahead of her. I just hope she doesn't let life make her crotchety.
There we go. Staying positive, staying on the upbeat, on the up-tempo, stay up-tempo.
Take that beautiful vibe and just,
No, that's great. You must be so proud. You obviously are proud, and you should be.
Yeah.
Because you've sort of so multiplied yourself. One of the things that you've been so effective at is collaboration. They talked about this in the New York Times article. And so you mentioned some favorite collaborations that you have. Mm-hmm. You mentioned just a couple that you had, a couple that you'd like to have, and just the ones that are memorable for you.
Well, as a bass player, I mean, I have to collaborate, I've really enjoyed simply playing bass with my favorite musicians. Mm-hmm. A lot of dreams came true, getting to work with the late, great Chick Corea. Mm-hmm. I worked with him on and off for over 26 years, and I played on, I don't know, maybe 5 of his albums. He played on 2 or 3 of mine or something like that. So we were very, very close. Getting to play with people like Sonny Rollins, and my peers, the late, great Roy Hargrove, Joey DeFrancesco, Joshua Redman, just so many, and of course people outside the jazz world. My biggest hero growing up was James Brown. Mm-hmm. So getting a chance to play, work with, and get to know James Brown.
Brother Mister.
Yeah, that's right. I feel proud that I got to work with both the king and queen of soul, James Brown and Aretha Franklin.
Beautiful.
I feel like I'm cool.
There we go. Drop the mic right there. There we go.
There's 3 people left who are on my bucket list: Dolly Parton, Gladys Knight, and Mary J. Blige. Now, I've played with Mary J. Blige once before because I toured with Sting for a couple of years. And when I was in Sting's band, Mary J. was a guest with the band. So technically I have played with her, but I want to do something specific with her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Those are beautiful. And everyone is fortunate to have you. You're such a good collaborator and team player. So I can, let me pivot to the Newport Jazz Festival,
yes,
if I may. You've been the artistic director since 2016. Mm-hmm. The dates are Friday, August 4th to Sunday, August 6th, and it's quite a lineup. UBS has reserved a block of tickets for our clients. I'll repeat that.
Thank you.
UBS has reserved a block of tickets for our clients. We will announce it soon. So just want to know what's in store for this year's festival, and can you share some insight into your creative process?
Sure. This is it's the biggest honor and the biggest thrill to be the artistic director of America's first music festival, outdoor music festival. The Newport Jazz Festival was founded by George Wein in 1954, and it left Newport for a while in the 70s and returned to Newport in the early 80s. And George bestowed me with this great honor of carrying his mantle after he stepped down in 2016. And I think the creative process, someone just asked me this last night, jazz has expanded into so many different forms, a lot of subcategories. I try not to pay too much attention to those subcategories, those subgenres, but I know that George's MO was to really put on a pedestal the type of jazz that, he loved Louis Armstrong, he loved Duke Ellington, he loved Count Basie, he loved Billie Holiday, Sarah Vaughan. But he really did love all forms of black music. So he had no problem mixing in little Chuck Berry, little Mahalia Jackson, and in the late 1960s, he even booked Sly and the Family Stone and James Brown at the Newport Jazz Festival. I'm not sure he did it because he wanted to, but he knew it was good for business.
Right.
Absolutely. And hey, if I want to stay in business, I got to sell tickets. Yep. So George's MO was, I want the core of this festival to be jazz, but I also want to present music that I know people are really going to buy tickets to see. So a lot of this, a little bit of that to make sure this gets fed. And so this year, it's been a good challenge that being, balancing what the young people like. So, we have everybody from Thundercat and John Batiste, the legendary Herbie Hancock, who's going to be closing our festival, who just had his 83rd birthday yesterday. Diana Krall is going to be there. We have the great Charles Lloyd, who is going to be celebrating his 85th birthday. He'll be there. Marcus Miller is going to be performing. Who else do we have? Jazz is Dead, featuring Kamasi Washington and Joe Russo. Kamasi Washington is going to be doing his own set. Wow. Soul Live. India Owens, bad young sister from originally from Detroit, who plays bass on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
Okay, yeah, I know.
You know India.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
I do recognize her.
And so there's going to be a whole variety of things.
Too.
Yes,
that's a great band.
Yes, yeah. So that's just a few people that are going to.
Yeah, sounds more than a few. You've got it. That's so beautiful. One of the things that I've been so inspired by you and by Melissa is how open-minded you are. You're very open-minded, meaning not just in life, but also in music. Yeah. And therefore, you're sort of, many types of genre. You have authenticity in the music, but you're open to it. It's not a fixed or limited thing. It's ever growing. And by virtue of staying in touch with music trends generally, but young people in particular, you just keep up.
Yeah.
So you'll be relevant always for decades, and you'll collaborate across the genre. And it's so rewarding to see someone who stays sort of alive in the music, over the decades and evolves with the music.
Yeah, I feel like, you just described Herbie Hancock. That's why at age 83, he's still relevant. That's why all the young people not only worship him, but they can't wait to work with him because he knows he's going to listen to them, He will impart his wisdom, and also say, hey, I'm not quite sure what you young cats are doing. Show me.
Yes.
Yes. So that's the model that I tend to try to copy.
No, it's wonderful. And as a role model for those coming with you and behind you, if you will, that lifelong learning, that intellectual curiosity that you've got. We didn't even get into your humorist elements in your stand-up comedy, but we'll save that for the next chapter. But the breadth of your mind in terms of intellectual curiosity is also sort of inspiring.
Oh, thank you.
So I just wanted to thank you so much for spending time together with us in UBS. So listen, we've known each other a long time, and on behalf of myself, my late wife Santa, who may she rest in peace. Yes. You've been so important to us in our community. In and around Montclair, New Jersey, in the Northeast, and frankly around the world, she certainly would agree. I will close this with a call out to our clients and advisors who love jazz, Newport Jazz Festivals. The details are coming soon. You've heard a lot about it. And just from a personal thanks for spending time with us today.
It was my pleasure.
Okay.
Great talking to you.
Absolutely.
Brother.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.